A nuclear attack on London. In bomb terms, the blast was relatively small, but the death toll wasn't. Over 100,000 incinerated, and many more given a death sentence by radiation. For some people outside of the blast zone, life continued almost as normal. But after the attack, nothing in our country would ever be the same again.
Hi, I'm Clyde Lewis, and welcome to Ground Zero Behind the Scenes. It's a story that won't go away. It's a topic of the Olympics that are coming to London, England in 2012. What you just saw was a video that was broadcast on British television, BBC, called Spooks 9. It's a TV show dealing with a nuclear bombing at the Olympics. What's bizarre is that a lot of people are believing that it is predictive programming for the Olympics, and they're worried that something is going to happen. Now, we had talked many times on my program about the possibility of a messianic event or some sort of a UFO event where something is manufactured and is brought to the Olympics so people will just be in awe of it and that it will change everything. However, there may be another thing going on, and this is kind of scary because we know a lot about predictive programming here in this country because of 9/11. Let's take a look at this. For example, if you take a look at movies that were released prior to 9/11, especially movies like Independence Day, where they kind of reenacted the destruction of New York with the aliens landing, if you check out this slide that I put together, I wanted to demonstrate to you that Jeff Goldblum played a doctor named Levinson who actually was trying to calculate a time where the aliens would attack. Now, when he first opens his computer, you can see here, he opens it to 9/11/01. And I find that very interesting because here's a slide of the alien spaceship destroying the World Trade Center, which is kind of predictive program. It's kind of interesting that that happened, but it doesn't stop there. In the movie Armageddon in 1998, there was a launch day for the crew of Freedom and Independence shuttles. The countdown at the Kennedy Space Center had to stop, actually, at 9 minutes and 11 seconds. In addition, prior to a meteor shower striking New York, there's a taxi driver that said that a meteor had hit the World Trade Center, and he believed that it was Saddam Hussein in a terrorist bomb at first, which I find very interesting. Kind of predictive programming there as well. But as you can see, the countdown for the shuttles, 9/11, and then we see a huge meteor that takes out the World Trade Center, which is fascinating for 1998. Now, in the movie Traffic, I was also concerned because as I was looking at the boxes, I noticed this and I pointed it out to people, and I don't know if anybody understood. But I looked back as I was watching the movie Traffic, the drug movie, and as you can see, there are 9/11s that are posted all over the boxes, and a scorpion, which I find interesting. There's actually a book called Allah's Scorpion, and it was published in 2007, and this, of course, is a work of fiction, but what it talks about is Al-Qaeda, and their plot against America is Operation Scorpion. It was a military operation also that Dick Cheney was involved with during the first Gulf War that included a preemptive land attack on Iraq. It was rejected, though, by Colin Powell. So there's another incident of predictive programming. Here you see the Big Lebowski in 1998 as the dude is signing his check September 11th. On the television screen in 1991 is George H.W. Bush talking about the New World Order, which I find very fascinating as well, kind of a bit of predictive programming. Then in Fight Club, you see them looking at the Twin Towers before they come down. One of the things that's said is, "This is it, Ground Zero." Are you all ready for that occasion? Do you have any last words before that occasion, it says? And then, of course, during the buildings coming down, you hear that song, "Where is my mind, where is my mind?" And the buildings come down, they explode in New York City. The last to fall are the Twin Towers, which is a bit of predictive programming. You go to The Simpsons, also where you see 9/11 New York. It's actually a Simpsons where Homer received a letter from the city of New York informing him that his car is illegally parked at the World Trade Center. He decided that he needed to go to New York to move the car, but there you go, 9/11. Obvious. This was 1997, a bit of predictive programming for those of you that are following along. If you look at Enemy of the State, Gene Hackman tells Will Smith that they look at John Voight's personal details, the guy who plays the senator, John Voight. They look at his personal details and they find out that Thomas Bryan Reynolds was born September 11th, 1940. A little hint there. And The Matrix, when Neo, of course Keanu Reeves, is interrogated by Agent Smith, they open up his file and it actually shows that his passport expires September 11th of 01, and this is back in 1999, 1998 when the Matrix was first released. So, and of course we have talked with we have talked about the lone gunman incident before, and we've even had the lone gunman in a special Ground Zero get-together on September 11th. They actually gathered together to speak to us, and of course Dean Haglund was at the Bing Lounge to talk to us about this incident, where to this day, a remarkable coincidence that prior to, in fact in March of 2001, prior to the destruction of the World Trade Center, there was a plot line for the pilot episode of The Lone Gunman where the object or the objective was to fly a plane into the World Trade Center and to have it controlled, remotely controlled, and flown into the World Trade Center, which is a remarkable coincidence. And of course there's Emergency Response to Terrorism. This was also released prior to the World Trade Center bombing, and it shows a target right there on the tower. So as you can see, this was 1998, May of 1998 where this happened, and as you can see, predictive programming happens in all forms. And sometimes it's in the cards, and I was pointing out, you take a look at a tarot card, and the tower destruction, the idea of the destruction of the temporal tower, it's a suspension in an ancient meme from the Tower of Babel, the Twin Towers. The symbolism stands for a ceasing of communication with the creator gods, the end of time, the craziness of synchronization, all that, and people are saying that maybe at the 2012 Olympics they'll be resyncing time because the stadium is sitting on the zero-base time meridian, which is a very powerful area on the Earth. However, it all seems a little peculiar to be saying all this because people are saying, well, it can't be true. This can't be happening. But we saw the predictive programming with the World Trade Center. We saw the predictive programming in movies and in books and record cover albums and all kinds of weirdness that was going on. People began to notice it after the fact, and now people are starting to notice before the fact with the Olympics and the Spook 9 TV series and several other things that may be out there. There's also a card game called the Illuminatus card game, where in the Illuminatus card game, or the Illuminati card game, what's interesting is the image of the Pentagon that is on fire. This was, I think, released in 1995. This was 1995 where this was released. And these cards represent a different type of Illuminati project, or a project that the Illuminati will carry out. One is the destruction of the Pentagon, and two is a terrorist nuke or an attack on the two towers, the World Trade Center. Its representation of that seems kind of odd and coincidental that all this has been happening with these cards and this predictive programming and everything else. Well, take a look at this. Here we have in the Illuminatus cards, England says, though England's power is reduced today, her influence is still felt everywhere. England gets 2 action tokens at every turn. And then we move to this picture, which of course is combined disasters. And many people are speculating that this is a representation of Big Ben coming down, a nuclear explosion with people fleeing. And of course the colors that they're wearing are the colors of the Olympic rings. And so, I don't know, a little peculiar that people are even reading into this and maybe making it a little bit more than it is. But of course, I've spoken with Doc Marquis, and Doc Marquis, who is a former Illuminati, a member of the Illuminati, tells me that this is exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to program us for this because it's been written about and talked about before in other get-togethers that there may be a major terrorist attack happening in England in 2012 during the summer. And what has been pointed out to me by several listeners is that the Rockefellers, the Rockefeller Foundation, had put together several scenarios that they wanted, actually, that they were approximating for the future. And some people speculate that they put it in a random computer. The computer came up with the scenarios so they could explain how we could avoid or at least help out after these disasters take place. I want to slow down just so you know. This Rockefeller plan is fictitious, okay? It's hypothetical, it's not real, but it seems peculiar and very, very eerie when you consider that they're talking about planned catastrophes or catastrophes that would occur with such breathtaking frequency in between 2010 and 2020. It says here, The years 2010 to 2020 were dubbed the Doom Decade for good reason. The 2012 Olympic bombing, which killed 13,000 people, was followed closely by an earthquake in Indonesia, killing 40,000, a tsunami that almost wiped out Nicaragua, and the onset of the West China famine caused by a once-in-a-millennium drought linked to climate change. Why have they decided that there should be, or there could be, or why did they develop this scenario, this hypothetical scenario that there'd be an Olympic bombing killing 13,000? Why is there a television show in England called Spook 9 where they are reenacting this nuclear bombing of the Olympic Stadium? There's also a guy named Tom Kane who wrote an article in the London Telegraph about a fictitious nuclear bombing, a dirty nuke bombing at the Olympic Stadium. So I guess we have to wait and see what's happening, and we're going to talk more about this because it just gets more fascinating, and it's almost like it's the Necro-Olympics because people are expecting some death, they're expecting something miraculous to happen, something strange happening. So I would suggest we wait and see, keep our eyes focused on what is happening, and keep our minds at ground zero. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this has been Ground Zero Behind the Scenes.
They cannot be underestimated. Everything that's happened, everything that's going to happen, they've been planning it for a long time.